Sometimes on the Haag-Streit LED power supply, the shell gets cracked and breaks, even though the power supply still works. The shell can be replaced. The guts can be removed out of the LED power supply and put into a new shell. These are some of the tools that you'll need to remove the guts. You need some type of pliers, screwdriver, a pin pusher to remove the pins, a torx bit, and maybe a small socket, a 5.5 millimeter socket that's in this set. After you've taken the 4 Phillips screws out, to take it off of the top, you'll need to open it up, and right here there's an opening for a screwdriver. We're just going to pry it out, and then we can lift it up at the same time, and then that cover will come out. It's got 2 places in here where it goes in, and also right here. But as we bend the shell out, then we can pull this out and take this cover off. And something that you should do is look inside it and either take a picture or draw a diagram of where the wires are going, and so that when you put it back together you're not confused. But if you look at it, you can tell that, well, this side is going to be the neutral side, the blue. The black is going to be the load side. And you'll notice that the neutral side, the wires stay to the outside. The outside of your switch. They come over here. And on the outside of this connector. So if you think about being the outside, this is going to stay on the outside. And also they're labeled in on the circuit board and L for load. So your load is going to stay on the inside. This one runs on the bottom of the switch, and then it connects back up here, and it runs in here, and it's on the inside. So think of the load being on the inside, the path. And look at everything, and if you've got a photo, then you know you have a reference point. One thing you're going to have to do is unpin this amp plug, and if you don't have this, then you might have to cut the wires and then join them back together afterwards if you are unable to unpin this amp plug. And look at the path. The fixation hot is always on by itself, and the hot green of the main is going to be on the outside of this side. And so you have for the main you have the hot, the neutral, and then for the fixation you have the hot and the neutral. The hots are always on the outside, and the fixation hot is by itself. So first of all, we're going to have to depin these, because we've got to have to pull the cable through the box, the shell. So you really need one of these little gadgets to depin these amp plugs. Push it in, and then push the pin through. it in. This one's a little tough. Okay, that's always a good start whenever you can depin your amp plug. Now remember, when you put these back together, you're going to have to open up the fins a little bit. There's 3 fins on each pin. You're going to have to, because this pushed them closed, you're going to have to open them up just a little bit, all these fins, 3 fins on each pin, so that when it's time to reinstall, they'll catch like they should. And next you'll have to release this wire harness holder. Not sure what the term is called, but we're going to squeeze it like this, and we're going to squeeze it with our pliers, and that will make it smaller because it's got a little lip on it that's around the cable, and if we squeeze it, then we can pull it out. So we're going to try to squeeze the top, because that's where the piece is. I have some pliers here, and I'm going to squeeze and push out at the same time. Hopefully it'll release. You might have to get a screwdriver to help yourself out. Screwdriver on this side, prying out, but I think we're going to get it. Okay, we got it. So we can take our connector off, and you'll know how to put it back in place, because there'll be a definite indention where this top piece folds down into it. So now that we've released that, we can pull our cable all the way through. And then this circuit board is going to be held down by 4 Torx 10 screws, and we'll get to those in a minute. But on this side, we're going to have to release the switch and the socket, and this is the ground plug. So it's probably better to, well, I don't know what's better, but we're going to have to release both of these. And so you have more room up here. You could start up here, or if you wanted to start down here. But again, you're going to have to squeeze on the switch. You're going to have to squeeze the top. Actually, if you could squeeze both, but that's going to be hard to do to get your pliers underneath it. But if you were to get your screwdriver and push down on each side, or if you can get your pliers to get in there and squeeze and push out, maybe that will release your switch. Now this one's broken, so it's going to come out pretty easily anyway. But if I were doing that on a one that wasn't bad. Okay, here's one where it's not broken, and I'm going to be eventually using this shell anyway. So to get this switch out, I'm going to push down on these little tabs, locking tabs on each side, and as I'm pushing the switch out, if I can move it down and push out, I may be able to release it. So I'm going to push down and push. Got that corner. I'm going to push this corner. Okay, so by pushing down on it and pushing out with my thumb, I was able to release the top of the switch, and then maybe you can work your switch out with your screwdriver and release that switch. So when you're putting it back in, and you can pull it out, and then you can pull your wires off. And remember where the sequence is. The lower ones are going to be going back here to the plug, are going to underneath the switch, and then on the top is going to go over to the circuit board. And there's going to be a gap up here, so that's how you know what's on is going to be up here, or if these are wiped out and you don't know what's up or down, on or off, just if there's this gap on here, this is going to be the on side, and that's where the wires on top of your terminals are going to be going to the circuit board, and the bottom ones are going to be going to the plug. So now that we've released that, we can release these cables by using my screwdriver. I'm going to pry these off. Same with the bottom. Hopefully there's enough room for you to get your screwdriver in there and pry it out, or get a bigger screwdriver. So if you were replacing the switch, this is what you would be doing. This is all you had to do. Well, you could go in, and this would be the switch. And again, up, it's got this space up here. The flat part is going to be on. Off is going to be down here. So we've got to remove that, and then we're going to have to remove the plug and the ground. So to release if you want to do it, be careful, just go ahead and take your cables off. Now we can get to our outlet easier, and we can be squeezing the bottom while we're squeezing the top. Okay, now we've released that. So since we've taken a picture, we'll know where we can connect our wires. Yeah, they might be off, but since we have our picture, we know where they're going to go. But if you want to rehook them so that you don't forget, hook your wires back up. Okay, and then we have to release the ground plug. And now that you have opened up this space, this is where I'm using this handy tool, this set, and there's a 5.5 millimeter socket in here that is going to be perfect, like it was made for this job. Now, if you don't have this, well, you're going to have to use some pliers. But in here, there's a nut that's holding this ground wire, and I'm going to lefty-loosey to remove that nut. And then our neutral is released. There's a nut, a washer, and then the wire, and then a bigger washer, and then a spacer, and then the outer pin. So again, this goes in first, and you'll notice it's square. It's got two sides of square. That's going to keep it from turning when you have your wrench in there, or your pliers, or your socket. You'll see how it's got the square parts so that it'll fit right in, and it won't turn. So just showing you what it looks like when all the pieces are together. You have the plug that plugs in, and you have a spacer, and then a bigger washer, and then the wire connector, and then another lock washer, and the nut. So that's the sequence. And it's a 5.5 millimeter nut. Once we have removed the Torx 10 screws, we can remove our circuit board. And now our shell is completely empty of all parts. Before we start putting this together, just wanted to make a few observations. These switches, if you look at them, the first three are in the open position, but number 4 is in the closed position. So if yours aren't like that, and that's how it was originally, then that's how you need to replace it. That's how that one is. And remember that when you're putting a circuit board in, because these two things stick out, it's going to have to go in there first in their respective slots, and then you can fit it down. And also on the other end, your ground is going to be plugged in here. And then this switch, if you had taken this off, if you'll notice on the circuit board there's a letter N and a letter L. So we're calling that neutral and load. And the neutral is blue and the load is black. So just because things are polarity important, let's keep it on the same polarity. Okay. What we're going to do first is go ahead and put this ground pin in, because it's accessible. It's down on the bottom and we can get to it. And remember, it's got two slots on the end, on the inside, so it'll fit right in there and it won't turn because it's got a slot. And remember, there's going to be the spacer is going to go on afterwards, and then a washer, the bigger washer, and then the cable, and then another washer, and then the nut. But right now we're just going to put that in. If you'll notice, this washer, this lock washer, has a concave and a convex surface. We're going to put the convex surface towards the nut, so when we screw it down, it will give more tension to keeping that tight. go ahead and put our ground wire on. And then the smaller washer, block washer. It's a little tricky keeping all the washers and everything together. And the nut that goes in this socket, I even put some paper down, stuffed some paper in there so that the nut wouldn't go so deep. So you may think about stuffing some paper in here and then putting your nut so that it sticks out right at the end as you're going in here. I've got my hand on all the moving parts of the puzzle, and the nut is inserted in the socket. So going in. And tightening it up. This may take a while to do for you like it did me, or it might be very easy. We can go ahead and put our circuit board in. We want to put our cable in first. And aim your two plugs in their slots, and then go down and then insert our four torx screws. Remember to start all four of your screws before you tighten them down. Make sure they all fit, and make sure that circuit board is sitting flat on its raised tabs to make sure that these are sticking out, these two plugs. Okay, next we push our wire. There's a little opening. We can push our wire in here. If your ground isn't connected, it's connected there, and your Molex plug is connected there. And we have our plug and our switch to go in. So either order, whatever you want to do. We'll go ahead and put our plug in first. And remember, the neutral is going to go to the outside. So this is up. And there's an N and an L imprinted on the plug. So that way you'll know which way is which. And you'll be plugging the correct wire into it. So we're just going to slip this in. Making sure that we have the right configuration and just push it in. It should lock in. Now we have our switch. And remember, the bigger space is going to go to the top. That is the on position. And we can go ahead and plug our wires in before we put our switch in. So we know from the plug it's going to go in, and it's going to attach on the bottom. Looking at our switch, our bottom, our neutral is on the outer side, so we'll plug that in on the bottom. And then we have our load is on the inside. So these are going to go on the bottom. From the plug to the switch, they're on the bottom. And then these, you can either wait till you put it in or put it in now before you put your switch in. And same way, look at your colors. Your neutral is going to be on the outside. Colors are matching, and then your load is going to be on the inside. So if you were just replacing the switch, that's the way it is. Right here, we're going to plug our our ground in here. And now we're configured correctly, and we can just push our switch straight on in until it clicks also. It should click, and that should go in. Okay, and then we have our cable connector, cable holder, and you'll see where it's indented on the inside. That's where the top is going to go in. So put it around here, slip it onto our cord, right where the indentation is. That's where we want to put it, so it'll be easier to squeeze when we're going back in. Squeeze that thing, get it in place. If you have it in the same spot, it should go down a little easier. And then we'll get our pliers. We gotta get that little plastic in first. Okay. And we're going to squeeze and insert. Now, it may look like it's hard going in, and so you'll just have to work your connector, harness connector. Okay. Yours might be easy, it might be hard, but there it is. And it's back in. So we've got all this complete. All the wires are connected back onto their respective pins. Everything looks tight, and we can put our top back on. Remember, you have two spots here, two little tabs, and one in here. This is going to go to the back, so you find where the openings are. Make sure your wires are tucked down in, and it should go into the little notches in the front and in the back. Just have to pry out the shell a little bit so that these two tabs can fall into place. So we're going to push that out, and they fall in. So everything is in there nice and tight now. And then the last thing we need to do is put our Molex, our amp connector back on. And remember, it's going to be green, yellow, white, brown. Brown hot, fixation by itself. But before we do it, we're going to have to lift up each fin. There's 3 fins on each pin that we're going to have to raise up just a little bit and lift the tab just a little bit. There should be 3 on each side. Don't have to go up. The reason they're squeezed down is because our extraction tool, when we went inside our amp tool, it goes in the pin and it pushes those little fins down so that it's not holding on the amp connector anymore, and then this pin pushes it out. This keeps the fins squeezed in, and then the center part pushes the pin out. So go ahead and get all those fins opened up. Once we have all our fins pushed out a little bit, we can insert them back into the amp plug. Hopefully you didn't damage it too much, so you can reuse it. This is the amp plug that you get from Haag-Streit, and it's going to have both 4 male and female pins in it, plus the jumper to jump your fixation to either bulb or LED. But we'll go ahead and insert these. Remember, the tab is going to be on the outside. It's going to connect with the other Molex plug, so that's going to be towards the outside. And you can start putting these in order so that you can insert them in the correct order. And you can do one at a time or position all of them at the same time. Okay, the 3 on this side, and then the fixation by itself. Okay, so you should be able to push them in. They might be a little bit hard, but you may have to do each one individually, and so you may have to work the pin in so that it starts to find the correct spot, and then push it in. So you may have to wiggle them a little bit to so that they find their spot. And when we were pushing them in, you should feel a little give, like they reached the end. There should be like a slight click, and they should all be the same distance on the outside of the plug. That's the plug. Now if you had to cut yours off because you didn't have one of these tools and you had to insert a new plug, well, just make sure that you crimp these wires down on these pins very, very strongly, because if it's got a loose connection, then it's going to start arcing, and your amp plug will start melting. And that happens a lot of times. Where here's an example of one that's melted. Because the connection on the pin may not have been good. And so because of that, it starts arcing and getting hot and melting. So that happens quite often. And so you just gotta, that's why it's best to go ahead and de-pin it with the correct tool rather than trying to crimp it yourself. But you might be good at it and you don't need tools like this. Here's some part numbers you might be interested in if you're getting the shell only Haag-Streit. This is the number. If you wanted to get the tool set, this is the number. And it has the 5.5 millimeter socket in it that I used on this operation. And then the extraction tool is right here. And then your amp connector with the 4 male and female pins is right there.